had 7 students and 2 faculty from the School of Architecture. And we decided to do a workshop, a pre-workshop before this one. So what we did was created a data bank of all the actual, the current situation of Puerto Rico, like where there was no electricity, what was the damage as we can gather day by day, because, feedback and data was, getting updated day by day. So based on that, we created this data bank that was lately used on the workshop that we did in March. So as we see for the workshop, that we think that the role of academia, it's local, but it's also external. So workshop for us, it's a great example of how can we integrate the academia with the authorities, with the community, and create a synergy of proposals and ideas that can later develop and reach the people that actually need to be reached in order to allocate the budget and the things that need to be done. So we see that academia is this neutral integrator that sensitizes all those aspects into visionary proposals. So that's what we did. We went to Puerto Rico. We spent 10 days there. The first day of the conference, we have lectures from the UNESCO and some other visiting professors. The second day, we have the municipalities of San Juan, Loíza, and Canóvanas, which David was there, actually presenting what was the damage, what was the challenges that they face, and what do they need from us that we can do. So they present the students what the current situation was, and how can we help in a way. So we had 5 different labs that they were focused on mountain and flood risk areas, and we concentrate on the Rio Grande de Loíza. So they were working in the area of Loíza all through Canóvanas, San Isidro, and Cubuy. The second lab was mostly focused on Santurce and San Juan, and all the 40,000 abandoned buildings are there, and how can the students think about new possibilities of retrofit those. The third lab was housing. So we're focused on public housing, informal settlements, and formal settlements, and also the risk that they have, not only for the storm-related risk, but also social or economic challenges that they face. The fourth was emergency course. So we're envisioning containers as a way of prototype models for a safe haven when something happens. So they have that in place, not to be delivered at the island when after the hurricane happens. I really have those centers that we identify 100 locations that should be they should be placed, and I hope those can be community centers and they can help the community, the rest of the year. But when emergency happens, when emergency happens, they become a shelter. They become a safe haven where people can go have clean water, energy, food, and they can even go and do their FEMA things. So we visit the sites. We got with the community the following day. There was a group that visited Playita, Laguna, and Llorens. And the other group, we went to Canóvanas and Loíza, and we saw the mudslides. We went to San Isidro and Cubuy, and we saw the dam and all the damage that happened. And I forgot to tell you, the fifth lab was untapped economic opportunities. So they focused on the Coliseum in San Juan, and also the Tren Urbano, and how can that kind of push that economic opportunity. So the students, after 5 days working, it was a collaboration between the UPR, the University of Florida. We have students from Rome. We have students from Civic, Seville, and the New York Institute of Technology. So we gather around 150 people between students and consultants and professors and officials and authorities. So the students managed to work some visions and ideas that they later presented the following Saturday to a panel that we were fortunate to have Dr. Melendez to be one of our panelists and our jurors. So you know, the students, they got the feedback. You know, after the challenges were presented, they came out with this idea, but then they also have the feedback from the locals and the authorities and the people that actually know the subject, see how they can move forward. And some of these projects were actually, you know, it was 5 days, so it's not the final thing, but it's still a work in progress. So over the summer, we're touching back on it and fixing them, and see as we get feedback from other persons, how can we move forward with it and publish it. And for us, the main thing is this opens a dialogue and a discussion between community, students, academia, and the officials. So we can propose what we think it will be, you know, accurate or not accurate, but right, per se, and see how we can start thinking on other possibilities. We actually hosted a conference on tropical architecture and back in December at the university, and we had the former director of FEMA assist, and there was one thing that he said, that we can rebuild once, we can rebuild twice, but there will be no funds for the building the third time. And we keep rebuilding the same way we do, and we clearly see that it's not working. So we need new ideas and new visions. So for that, what's next is just we believe that, you know, the workshops and the conference and bringing the right people together opens this opportunities to unify the strategies, to find more funding, to multiply this, to make more proposals, and create this, for example, for the emergency course that we envision the containers, maybe actually get the funds to actually make a prototype and put it in place and see how it works, and how can we multiply and use that as a model that it could be put in the island. And, you know, it will be there ready when a disaster happens, with that we know it's gonna hit eventually. So I think that's it.
Thank you very much, Maria. That sounds like a great initiative, and I'm happy to know that it's going to
hopefully we're pushing for the second.
Yes, yes. Well, let's continue with Jose, who's going to talk about the projects that he has implemented at the University of Central Florida.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know UCF, the University of Central Florida, it's in Orlando. And we were the main university in all the mainland US to be impacted with the most so-called displaced students. We receive around 210 students. And to give you kind of a background, a little bit of UCF, we're becoming a Hispanic serving institution. That means that 25% of our students are actually Hispanics. We have 66,000 students. We're the second largest university in the nation. So that means we have a lot of resources. I was actually looking at the budget of the university. It's about $2.1 billion. So there's a lot of resources. And that's the main university in Central Florida, where we have the emergence of our new community here in the US. So I did my AA, my associates, and then transferred to UCF. And when I got there, I realized there was no student, like Puerto Rican Student Association. For me, that was incredible because we were in Orlando. So I was like, you know, I have the vision, as Dr. Melendez was saying in his opening remarks. You have to first identify the problem, do your research, and then take your action. And then when I propose to myself to take an action, I don't stop until I do it. So that's what I did. You know, I had that mentality of actually starting the association. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I was doing something right. And so actually, first Irma came to Florida. And that same week, I was actually preparing my flyers to promote myself and the association that was emerging. And I wasn't able to do it because of the hurricane. But then the first week of classes came by and started giving the flyers, and then Maria was announced in Puerto Rico, and I was like, this is crazy, you know. And then you can go ahead and push the slides. And then you can see those were our meetings. You know, at first we didn't have that huge amount of people, but we were having already, like when we started the first before this, 20 to 30 members already, like within UCF before the new students. So we were pretty successful compared to associations that were already, you know, in the university. And so what we did is we created a relief efforts committee, knowing what was going to come, because the university had already extended it's called the residence tuition reduction, which you were consider the tuition of in-state, which is $3,000 versus $11,000. So a discount of $9,000 per semester for the students. And it included the students who were already at UCF, who had out-of-state tuition, and also the students who were going to start in this semester, spring 2019. And so it was a great initiative from the University of South Florida. But what we noticed was that the university was actually extending this in-state tuition, this help for the transfer student, for only one semester. So that implied that our students were those 210 students who had suffered so much already, and who wanted to continue their studies over here, we're gonna face, you know, the challenge to pay now in summer to continue their studies now $9,000. So it was incredible. They were already taking loans, which they had never taken in their life, and now they were having to face to pay housing, and in Orlando it's super expensive and it keeps increasing. So imagine now they were trying to figure out how to actually pay those $9,000, you know, how to work everything out, and with their family having suffered so much in Puerto Rico. So so that's a parenthesis I wanna leave there. I wanna continue a little bit more with our engagement, but I wanna a little bit further in my presentation open the parentheses again. So what we did is, can you go back a little bit? I'm sorry about that. Can you go back? And so what we did is we try to engage as much as possible with the community outside, because it was so important. You know, we were all being impacted, not only at UCF. So we partnered with Boricua Iniciativa Acción Puertorriqueña, which is a big nonprofit organization in Orlando. And actually, we went to also community events where we were invited to host, you know, like the Puerto Rican table, Puerto Rican student table. And so we came to be, from all of our initiatives, kind of the head of pretty much all the Puerto Rican students in the Central Florida area. And all the community, you know, leaders wanted to invite us. And we're here actually with Congresswoman Murphy, who is our district congresswoman. Then you can go ahead. And so what we did, Puerto Ricans didn't exist at UCF. We were, the estimate is from that 25%, which accounts for like 17,000 students who are Hispanics, we are about 38. So that's the estimate. The biggest Hispanic, from the Hispanics, the big population are Puerto Ricans. And we are about 6,000 at UCF. That's the estimate. There's no specific number, but that's the estimate. So, I mean, there was no sense of being Puerto Rican at UCF or any emergence of actually, you know, taking initiative and having a presence. So we created a whole, you know, obviously we had the situation, but what we did is we took that opportunity. We created a media campaign to actually expose ourselves. So we actually, you know, we were really relevant, if not the most relevant Hispanic population. And one of the most relevant populations of the university right now. You know, they're paying the administration, everyone's paying us attention, you know, all of a sudden. You can go ahead. So what we did is we hosted the first Puerto Rican Student Leadership Conference. We actually invited students from FIU, because Florida International University doesn't have any Puerto Rican association also. That's incredible. It's the second biggest pretty much, you know, in Florida, and they don't have one. So they came, we invited them. They came and we hosted some of our great leaders within Florida. You can see those Bob Cortez and Amy Torres. They're both Florida representatives who are Puerto Rican. Orange County Commissioner Emily Bonilla, Dr. Fernando Rivera, who's a researcher at UCF, Mr. Jimmy Torres and Adela Lopez. They're both great community leaders. And so what we want to do is a development of our youth leadership, because that's our future. And in Orlando, we need, you know, to have people who are going to be successful, who are going to be the leaders of our future. So that's what we're trying to build. And so you can go ahead. And so I'm gonna open the parenthesis again. So when we saw that the students had to actually pay those $9,000, what we told ourselves is we have to take an action. So kind of the new coalition we created at UCF, the Puerto Rican leaders, we said we want to take this to the table and do everything we have to do to make sure that at least we can extend that in-state tuition for a year, which is the requirement for students to get their residency, their official, without asking. You know, you're a resident, that's it. You know, you don't have to ask for more in-state tuition. So that's why they did what we did. We pushed through the Student Senate, and that's the Board of Trustees, which is the board that governs over the university. And so we got the support from elected officials, from Darren Soto, Congresswoman Murphy, even the governor of Puerto Rico supported our effort. All over, you know, the community, it was the media, it was amazing. We worked all around. And so we presented through our president of the student government, and we got approved unanimously. And so we kind of, I call it, we transform a policy. And that's, I think that's the vision we all have to have. You know, I'm a student, you know, I'm not an elected official, whatever, you know, I believe in myself a lot, but I mean, I'm just putting it into perspective that we as individual, you know, if we propose ourselves to do something, we can do it, you know, it just takes the effort, you know, so, and then to continue. So, I mean, pretty much we're very proud of our efforts because we've had great achievements. Our most, you know, greatest effort is extending the in-state tuition, but also we were awarded by UCF as the new organization of the year. So I believe in having, as Martin Luther King, having a dream and then going for it, you know, achieving it. And I think that's the vision we have to have. And also, you know, right now, as continuing my efforts, I want to pursue the Student Senate to have more of a broad capacity of resources. And I want to start organizing the different universities and students around Florida. And if we can at a national level, and that's why, you know, we're here to network and to expand our opportunities to help our diaspora on the island. Thank you.
Let's continue with Ms. Teresita Levy, Director of International Programs and Global Partnerships, Associate Professor of Latin American and Latino students at Lehman College.
Hi, everyone. So first, I should warn you that I am a historian by training, which means that you're going to get a little bit of a history lesson. I'm sorry. Awesome. Awesome. Great. Okay, so I have very brief comments today. Lots of footnotes. No. And I wanted to tell you that, well, first I think we may have the most crowded panel at 2:15 on a Saturday, two-day conference I have ever seen. So thank you so much for being here. And what I wanted to know was, how many of you are here because of the academic engagement side of the house? All right, I figured, I know. And how many of you are here because of the civic engagement side of the house? I figured, I know, I love it when I'm right. And I wanted to propose that we begin by talking about how these two things are intrinsically connected. And that as academics, we have a major role in engaging our community. So that's where I would like to start. And now for the history lesson. So I am a professor of Puerto Rican history at Lehman College. And we are a Hispanic serving institution, except 54% of our students are of Hispanic heritage. We are also, I belong to a department proudly that was the first ethnic studies department on the East Coast, modeled after the Chicano studies departments of the West Coast. And we are the first Puerto Rican studies department in the nation. So I'm very proud to stand as a Puerto Rican, born and raised on the island, but having lived here now officially most of my life as a New Yorican, proud of both of those things. And to tell you that there is, thank you, that there is a place, there is a fundamental place for academics, for intellectuals to think about ways that we can be visionary, of ways that we can engage the community, of ways that we can be civically minded. And I have two titles, if you noticed, from that very lovely introduction. I'm a professor first, but I am also the director of international programs and global partnerships, which means that I have the pleasure of traveling around the world and developing partnerships with universities in near and far places. And I say that only to tell you that I have been thinking a lot over the last 2 years about the Cuban model of education, because I have had an opportunity to take 49 of our students to Cuba over the last spring break to study and learn from our Cuban partners. And their model of education says that education is only valuable if it has social impact. And it is only in whatever we study as intellectuals and academics has to have social good behind it. So when I think about the work that we do as historians of Puerto Rico and sociologists of Puerto Rico and psychologists and economists or anything else of Puerto Rico, whether we're Puerto Rican or not, right? Because we have many brothers and sisters that are not Puerto Rican and study and are involved, right? What is the social good of what I do? What is the social impact of what I do? And I would suggest that we need to start thinking that way. And that this is a perfect opportunity, as tragic as it is, to put on that hat and say, what do we do? How do we have social impact? How do we have social good in how we think about the questions of history or economics or psychology or sociology, right? So that's the first thing that I want to let you to think about. And I have no answers, by the way, none. Sorry, if you were here for answers, I have none. I just have lots of questions, but I hope that we can dialogue as we move into the second part of this panel. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that academic engagement and academic partnerships for civic engagement are limitless. They're endless. But here is the key. They need to be defined by those that are affected. In other words, I can't pretend to know what it was like to be in Puerto Rico during the week of Maria, because you know what? I was not there. My mother was, and I can talk to her and I can listen to her. My friends were, and I can talk to them and I can listen to them, but I cannot pretend to know what is best for how to handle what has happened. So if I want to establish any academic partnership, if I want to establish any project, I have to turn the lens the other way. And I have to say, what can we do to help you achieve your goals? That is my question. As a person that develops academic partnerships, as a person that thinks about the world, about how do we work with institutions, I say, what do you need? How can I help you? And every project that we do, every partnership that we build has to start from that place. And it's easy for us, I think, right? To say, I have a great idea for you. I know exactly how we're gonna fix this. If you just listen to me, see, you know this, right? If you just listen to me, we would solve the whole thing, right? Let me tell you, how many of you know? I mean, you know this. Come on, I said this to my mother. I say this to, it's embarrassing, right? But how do we say this with politics? We know better, right? We say this with economics. We know better. And we do this with civic engagement and community building. We know better. We do not know better, right? And we have to be guided by the people that we are supposedly helping. They are the ones that tell us what they need. So that's my second thing that I'm going to leave you to. I have no answers also. I'm just bringing up some things, right? And I will finish with this. One of the things that I have learned over the last several years doing this work is that, and I don't take credit for this, although it's a beautiful thought, and if I get emotional, please forgive me. But I attended, right after Maria, I was in Cuba for some detailed bureaucratic things that I have to deal with in order to prepare for this trip that I took students on. And I happened to be there when there was a meeting at one of the universities about their emergency preparedness plan. And one of the topics they talked about was how they were able to restore electric power for 98% of their population within a week of Irma. And this is remarkable, right? I mean, this is, you can imagine, right? I mean, my mother had electricity in February, right? In Guaynabo in February, right? And so Cuba, a country that we think of as having some serious economic and other challenges, was able to do this in 8 days, right? So I was stunned by this, and I wanted to hear, so I went. And I mean, there were a lot of explanations, which we won't get into right now, but I'll be happy to have them afterwards. But one of the things that the president of the university said was, your society is judged by the way that you treat the people that need you the most. And your ability to take care of those people after a natural disaster says more about the country that you are than anything else that you can do. And I would say that that is our challenge right now, as Puerto Ricans, as supporters of Puerto Rico, as scholars of Puerto Rico, Puerto Rican or otherwise, that is our challenge. How do we take care of the people that needed us the most? Defined by them, right? Defined by them. But how do we do that? I have no answers, just questions.
Very interesting question. Maybe you'll share some answers with us later today. Let's continue with Rachel Stephenson. Rachel is the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Strategic Partnerships at the Office of Academic Affairs for the City University of New York. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a real privilege to be here. And Dr. Melendez, thank you for the invitation to be a part of this panel. Today, I am an ambassador for the City University of New York. And well, any students, CUNY students in the house?
Some, yes.
Awesome. You know, for those of you who may not know the context, the CUNY context, the City University of New York is our public university system, the largest public university system in the country, with 250,000 degree-seeking students and another 250,000 adult and continuing education students. Lehman College is one of our amazing colleges. We have 24 colleges across the city, all 5 boroughs represented. Got a combination of 2-year colleges, 4-year colleges, and graduate schools. So it is a massive system. And I am here to talk about how our massive system, and you can imagine the challenges of navigating a system like ours, is ultimately being mobilized to send 250 CUNY students to Puerto Rico starting this June. We are among a community of stakeholders who have been charged with making this happen. You know, many of you are probably aware that Governor Cuomo earlier this year started to talk about the New York Stands with Puerto Rico Recovery and Rebuilding Initiative. There are a number of components to that initiative, including roundtables with lots of experts and tactical assessments, and you know, a plan for building workforce and training programs in Puerto Rico. And one of the components is a student-centered engagement opportunity. $500,000, I think, from UNICEF is part of the work. But in the end, when all of the pieces of this initiative were announced, Governor Cuomo made a real point to emphasize the fact that 500 students, 250 from the City University of New York and 250 from the State University of New York, would ultimately be deployed to Puerto Rico starting this summer to be a part of the rebuilding. And we mean that very literally. So I will be honest with you, you know, the announcement about our engagement happened, what, like 3 weeks ago?
2.5.
And we have, at breakneck speed, come together, you know, as a university to build a program which is modeled on an existing program at CUNY called the Service Corps, which has existed for many, many years. I'm the founding director of that program. And that program has deployed students locally. So, students have been in a variety of nonprofits throughout the 5 boroughs doing really meaningful work. So using that infrastructure, we've ultimately been able to, extrapolate and really think about how to create programming, how to recruit students effectively, how to train students, prepare students for this experience, and work with partners. So just a sense, and by the way, I will say this is all taking literally by the minute. Literally by the minute, we get more information and the model changes. So this is as of, May 12th, 2:55 p.m. Okay. But what we're thinking right now is that students will go to Puerto Rico starting at the end of June for 2-week sessions. So probably about 4 consecutive 2-week sessions. And during that time, they will be working with nonprofits on the ground. I mean, one in particular, All Hands and Hearts, has emerged as a very likely partner, although that still needs to be finalized. And they will be engaged with communities of volunteers who are literally, in neighborhoods and communities in the mountains. We don't even know exact locations at this point, but part of a living community of volunteers, residential community volunteers who are day after day after day a part of this work. Now, because we are thinking about creating context for the students who are there and helping them to, have experiences that they will take back with them in addition to the service that they'll be doing, we're also thinking about the kind of cultural enrichment which we can facilitate. Outside of the service project. Now, here's the really cool news. Students who are participating will not pay for their airfare, they will not pay for their lodging, they will not pay for their food. They will receive a $500 stipend from CUNY for that 2-week engagement. And one of the really important things that the governor has said about this program is that CUNY students can earn credits through the experience. Teresita has been amazing. Lehman College has been amazing in helping us to design an actual credit-bearing course. I mean, literally hot off the presses, approved by various committees recently. And this course is a 200-level experimental hybrid course that will provide some really important historical context before students go, some online stuff that they'll be doing, plus an in-person training, and then students will be submitting an e-portfolio project at the end where they can be really reflective about the experience that they've had. They can earn 3 credits, and CUNY is waiving the tuition for that credit-bearing course. So this is a real opportunity for our students, and we have begun recruiting. We have to date, over 1,600 applications from CUNY students, and that's in less than 2 weeks. I mean, it's been incredible, the response from our student community. And we have the very difficult challenge of starting on Monday to, ultimately review those applications, invite students to group interviews, and make a list of students who will take this journey. We are, as I've mentioned, minute by minute, figuring this stuff out. And, as panelists, we were talking earlier about whether our students would ultimately be able to engage with more than one organization. And I can say that is, we're figuring it out. We're working with the governor's office closely to explore those opportunities. But in the end, it would be great if we have multiple entry points for students and multiple, opportunities for them, but that is to be determined. This is an incredible privilege for me to be able to be a part of this team. I'm on a learning journey with everyone and really thrilled about how our students will, have this immersion experience and contribute in a meaningful way and really learn so much that will inform their own, personal and professional futures. So I suppose that's my high-level summary.
Great. I have a quick question. Is there a possibility that the program will be extended?
So I will say that we very much hope that this summer will be the beginning of a longer-term engagement. But because we're still making this real, we can't say for sure what will happen, but all the conversations we're having are about building an infrastructure for ongoing engagement.
Well, thank you for the information and for sharing, yes, the information about the project. We hope that it's very successful. And this is the time for all of you to ask questions. We're going to keep the conversation short with each participant to give everyone or the majority of you the opportunity to ask. So, yes, sir.
I used to teach at uni at Civic College. And when you mentioned, I actually started doing project-based learning. That's what we do at Pratt Institute. And if you know the Pratt Institute in the community and environmental development, the first lesson I learned as an academic is that you don't send students until they know something. Especially the community they're going to see, because right after I started teaching, the students came back with the most unbelievable prejudicial comments you can imagine. These people. Those people. So I said to Ron Schiff at that time, I said, Ron, don't send anybody until they understand poverty in the United States, all the urban issues. Because we're going to end up with worse students. People are going to hate, dislike, and confirm how these people are ugly and all that. Cultural authority crap, okay? Then I went to City University to try to open it. My point is I ended up in Massachusetts in a place that used two methodologies of teaching pedagogy. Project-based learning, which is easier said than done, and competency-based learning, which is also easier said than done. I took students to Cuba from City College, and the experience was mixed. Okay, although we were looking at real projects. So I'm very glad that CUNY and Lehman is doing it, but be careful, because the last time I took students, it was not as easy as it sounds. This is the issue, the burden on that community, unless the students know that they are a burden themselves. So they expect, as good or bad, to be given the comfort of life. Well, I took students. I have taken students many a times. It's not like I'm going to learn this from 101. But be careful, because then you have the institutions in Puerto Rico which already know how to do that in the University of Puerto Rico, that instead of you inventing the wheel here, perhaps. Anyhow, so competency-based, talking about project-based learning, is foundational because you change the pedagogy. Okay, you change the way you frame issues or learn itself. It's not memorizing something and they're vomiting at the end, but they know how to use it. Right?
Can I interject?
Sure,
can I just intervene? I would just say that, so Rachel with Service Corps has had many years of experience, but luckily because so many of our colleagues have had the experience that you described, we knew that we couldn't do it that way. So that when we prepared our students, or when any of us prepare our students to go abroad, we spend a lot of time talking about the historical, cultural, and political context that would explain the things that they're going to see on the ground. In the case of Puerto Rico, part of the work that we're doing together is putting information together that will explain to them, why is it that almost a year after the fact, we have to go and do this work, right? That there are reasons for that, structural, political, etc., and they will understand that before they leave. And that is very much a mission and a part of what I was talking about, that you go knowing what it is that you're getting into. None of our students expect that they're going to be in the same conditions that they currently live in. They understand what they are getting into. And we are very clear with them about what that will look like. So your point is very much well taken.
Thank you for your comments. Can we take another?
So the deadline to apply for that is May 19th. And you said the first round of people fly out June 1st is 10
Not
days.
June 1st. No, I said end of June. And honestly, we don't even have the real dates yet. So I'm just saying end of June, because we're approximating. The deadline is actually May 17th.
Okay.
And, but application review does start on Monday. But we're gonna have a two week or so vetting period.
So do you think that's enough time to really frame the conversation and frame their mindset to?
Well, the 2 weeks is just student selection. The training comes after. right? So, you know, the application vetting is in a couple of phases. We have readers from across the university who have volunteered to be trained on a rubric that looks at everything. And I do appreciate your comment. And these are, you know, very, very important things to acknowledge. I mean, among the things our readers are assessing, now, of course, you know, how much can you tell from an application that someone submits, but cultural competency and cultural empathy, you know, those are, that's a major points there. But we're also looking at professionalism and work ethic and maturity and I mean, you know, a whole range of things, but so that there's one preliminary look, and then we bring students in for group interviews. So these are in-person experiences where we are going to talk honestly about what students are getting into, assess their interest, and also put them in some situations where they're going to be working on projects together and kind of figure out, you know, if there's a challenge, if you throw something at them, what happens. I mean, just try to see them in real time reacting to things that, you know, we need to look at. Now, so that's a whole lot of thinking, and that's a lot of human beings, you know, figuring out who might be a good fit. Now, once those students are selected, it's early June, we have, you know, 3 weeks or so to prepare them. Now, you know, some of this is administrative, but some of it, the most important work is the community building and the tone setting and all the context work that we need to do. So, you know, listen, when you talk about time frame, we're on a crazy fast moving train. This is fast, right? I mean, it's fast, but we've got a whole lot of people who are paying attention to all those details and have the best of intentions and lots of deep experience to inform our work. But, you know, keep those reminders coming. Very important.
And if I can just add that the experience is really a 4-week experience, even though only 2 weeks are on the ground. And that is us recognizing that the conditions on the ground are worse than what we imagined when we first started. So we're going to do an intense week of pre-departure preparation that will include lessons on everything from global citizenship, community engagement, and history and culture and politics of Puerto Rico, equally divided. And then a 2-week experience in Puerto Rico where students will come together at the end of each day and process the experience together and write about it. And then a week back in New York where they will be able to debrief from it. Because sometimes that is the hardest. When we bring students back, it's the shock of being back into their normal life. So we are aware of all of these issues and we take them very seriously. And that is why we decided that we were going to just do a 2-week experience and then make sure that we preface it and anchor it with these very pointed learning experiences where people will be able to deal with these things.
We will take a question from Dr. Melendez.
Oh. Actually, I don't have too many questions, actually. May stand. But I have a challenge for the panelists, and thank you so much. When we put the panel together, we couldn't envision such a great complementarity and the spread and so forth. We have a couple of very interesting models. People that have actually taken groups to Puerto Rico, there's some experience there. But, you know, having said that, this is very interesting. The Cooney experience is mind-blowing. It's a free ride. And if we can sustain this, and, you know, we can convince powers to be, you know, put in our government. If this can continue, perhaps at a little slower pace, right. You know, it can have a lot of interesting byproducts. So my challenge to you is, you know, thinking long-term, we have found several things. First of all, Puerto Rico doesn't have the infrastructure for exchanges, right? They don't have hostels. You know, we found one hostel with 30 beds.
That's challenging.
And that's it in the whole metropolitan area. I mean, that's pathetic. Okay, you cannot have a youth tourism, exploratory, and all that, even academic, without an infrastructure where people stay cheap, right? So I think one of the byproducts, and I know it's a challenge for us, in how do you house, you know, 250 students that are all at the same time. Right? But one of the byproducts, I think, should be that we start working with the partners down there to create a network of options for housing. They have to have kitchen. They have to be cheap and all that. That's a big problem. But for example, we had this Rico here, the Michelle, the person that imagined that project, and now they have like 15 farm to table, you know, farmers in Puerto Rico, and they serve food there. I mean, those are some of the you know, things that I would like to connect to the Cooney trip. But so the point is, these people have a network, okay, already, but they don't have You know, for example, I say, well, with so many vacancies, why don't you convert 2 or 3 houses together into, you know, sort of a nearby hostels, not, you know, bed and breakfast, whatever you call it, but you don't have the structure for a hotel life, right? So you have to be creative with this byproduct of capacity in Puerto Rico. Another example is we have traditional courses, Bravo, Interamericana, but those are only for certain type of academic engagement, which is you go there, you take a course, you get your credits, you know, you pay your way one way or the other, and then you're done, right? But I think the challenge here is this component of service learning, volunteerism, engagement, and sustain that over time. Because this is the first down payment. Puerto Rico is not going to get out of this anytime soon. So I assume that we need to create that infrastructure. For example, we don't need professors to learn and engage students with La Naturaleza. They have 15 sites. All you have to do is take it there. But there are other sites, como ejemplo Vicifico, where you need, if you want, they're going to learn about farm to table, but if you want also to learn about culture, you need to train people who are going to serve as guides that are trained to do this, certify and so forth. That's another byproduct. What's the infrastructure for this? Then you need to put the models, what Teresita is doing. By the way, we're going to put a history of Puerto Rico course online to complement what Teresita is saying, which actually she recorded in video, with a curriculum and all that. And so that people that do other experiences that are not as well organized will have access to that. So that, you know, before they go and all of that. But think about this. Most important byproduct for me is what José Luis was talking about. Because if you don't use this occasion, that you have this impetus of empathy with Puerto Rico to organize our own community in the diaspora, what the hell are we doing here? I'm sorry. I mean, that's the most important byproduct. We don't have a youth organization. We try to put together like 10 times. But we don't have a youth organization anymore. We used to have, beginning with the Young Lords and all the Puerto Rican Studies associations and, you know, all of that. But we don't have that anymore. We tried. We hired students, vamos a hacer esto, lo otro, pero this is the moment, okay? So how do we get José Luis and send him around campuses? Right?
Money.
Here's the thing. This semester, you know, Centro organized at least 20, you know, we have some flyers around there, at least 20 campuses talk about Maria, Puerto Rico, the impact and all this. Those are contexts that we have. And all those people want to go, but we need the products. We need the people on the ground to package this in ways that the academics can go. Because if you try to do it on your own, volunteerism, where are you going to do that? So the only thing that Centro can do, which we have done, is we put this exchange sheet on the web. And we want people from Puerto Rico to write down what they need. And we want people from the diaspora like you to say what you can do in terms of skills, resources that you bring, and so forth. And we're going to try to do some matching. We trained volunteers this morning. I got to shut up in a minute, but the point is that we have created a platform that can give sustainability of this. Well, we build capacity in Puerto Rico, help it. We're not going to do anything. We're going to help it. And then most importantly, how do we weave that network here of students and youth? We need a youth movement that can actually reconnect the diaspora. You know, if you heard me talking about this dispersion, this new exodus, how do we sustain identity? How do we sustain communication among us? Where is the communication hub that we need? And so I think that's the most important byproduct, that what you do in Central Florida, we can replicate throughout by engaging people and creating all these synergies in the process. So I said I didn't have a question. So my question to you is, how do we do this? How do we give sustainability? What is the vision that comes from this wonderful set of minds to weave that network of, you know, college level engages? By the way, the churches are doing the same. I have a similar speech for that.
Well, I can mention something to answer part of that question. For example, at the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico, well, the University of the District of Columbia has partnered with them to take students to the island. And we did that last year, as I mentioned before, back in August. And the plan is to do it again in May, next week. We will take even more students this time, not only from UDC, but also from other universities around the country. And I think the key for us is going to be to establish a formal partnership that can be sustained after the students that have coordinated this graduate. So we need to help the universities in the island to have that vision of sustainability, to develop their internal systems and the resources to take advantage of this opportunity, because definitely there's students here in the States that are interested in going and taking different courses and continue learning. That's something that I have seen. I have classmates that went there back in August and they want to go again, but the course that is being offered is the same. So there's that constraint. So I think we need to help the universities also there to establish that system. We'll take a question from there. I know you have been waiting.
Honorable Morales Mendez, a professor at Clark University, which historically has had a very aggressive civic engagement.
You need to talk louder.
Wow. Never thought. Clark, Ramon Morales Mendez, a professor at Clark University. Clark is, Mr. Mass, we've always had a very aggressive civic engagement, but there's no civic engagement without institutional commitments. And as you would know, the University of Puerto Rico is in an dire situation of fiscal and political crisis. So what I'm wondering is what type, how can these programs in some way create or help to promote a window to address the institutional crisis? Meaning, I mean, there are, basically what will the university not be able to do is to have programs like this. There's not, and it's terrible to be able to see institutions that can, use our context for it, yet we are not able to do anything along these lines. So I'm trying to think, how can this be a way to leverage power in order to begin creating a very different view or vision for what the University of Puerto Rico should be.
Maria wants to answer.
I'll say that I've been through your steps, like your shoes, because we organized our workshop in a month and a half, basically, and we had to fundraise and organize at the same time, so it was challenging. And I was lucky to find that hostel of 30 people so I could put all the students there. But for us, what we actually talk a little bit about when we start discussing the panel a week ago, that this could be a model for some kind of academic tourism and support the university, because we know that UPR has problems of right now the students left, and we don't know if they're coming back or when they're coming back. So it could be a strategy that can help the island, because we're bringing students from all over the country, all over the world, like we had Europe and New York and Florida, whatever. So we'll help the academics and the university to have other visions and other skills, and not only, for example, for us was architecture, but we also brought environmental engineers, and we have PhD for urban planning. So try to bring interdisciplinary aspects into it, and also kind of create that economic opportunity and establish that maybe there's a PhD program, there's courses. Like another thing that we are going to do next semester is with the University of Puerto Rico and UPenn. There's one professor, which is David Governor, that actually went there, gave a lecture about informal settlements. And we are partnering the three universities to create a course and take students, again, to Puerto Rico and study. This time we're going to study the Rio de la Plata and all the challenges and all the problems that might have. So, it was more like a concurrent thing that it could happen every semester, every year, with courses, with conferences, to workshops. I think there should be some kind of, at the University of Florida, we have some, academic agreements or within a university. So if we kind of set those up, like we have those with the UNESCO people, and so we have that agreement within a university. So we actually, when we were going to Puerto Rico, we were trying to figure it out. If we had an agreement already in place and we couldn't find any, and it was the debate because it was still a state, so it was an international agreement, so we have to kind of define that as well.
Can I introduce something just a little crass as somebody who organized the university exchanges to Cuba for 20 years?
Louder.
Money.
Oh, yeah.
The University of Puerto Rico is in dire straits.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, there's not an academic institution in Cuba with which I work that did not receive payment. And some of the hardest people to convince were the U.S. counterparts. What do you mean? Just because I get honorariums, does that mean I have to pay in Cuba? So we got over that hump after a decade or so. But I mean, if we're talking about using this to help rebuild Puerto Rico, let's put our money where our thoughtful minds are.
I think this point connects the three questions.
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
No, but that's good. We actually, I forgot to tell the number, but we got $9.7 million in savings for those students. If you calculate the whole students, and there's more students that are gonna benefit who are gonna come. So I'm an economics student, and I think in terms of resources. And universities are known for being institutions that help communities and nations and have a whole bunch of resources. And so what I believe is if we unite as students and we take power within our universities and push forward agendas, we can partner with universities in Puerto Rico, and we can exchange, as she's talking also, but also in terms of money and resources, as you're saying, how we can maybe envision and extrapolate some of the resources that we have over here in our universities and throw it to the students in Puerto Rico. But that doesn't happen if we don't unite and push forward.
Let's take one question from the left. Okay. Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. That's actually probably part of my question. I think the scariest thing I've heard all weekend was that the FEMA person said we can rebuild next time, and time after that, and then the third time there's no more. That's really, really scary. So what I mean, anyone can answer this. What's being done about economic awareness of how the treatment of the island throughout the past 500 years? What's being done about teaching students about how the connotation of the island and how economic policies are basically strangling more and more as time goes on? What's being done about helping change the economic thought towards the island at university levels or any level?
For example, one of the things that we did on the pre-workshop in October, and was mostly doing research and trying to understand what Puerto Rico is, because I have no idea. For example, my own personal stuff. We have a couple of students that were working on all the political and the legal and the history, and they introduced us to what the Jones Act is, which I had no idea. So, that was, then it was part of the research, the pre-research that helped the students that came in March to see, okay, Puerto Rico has a, $78 billion in debt. One of the reasons is this, there's one, so we would try to give them the research and to understand what's going on. And so that, kind of help in that sense. But it's a little.
I will add that the University of the District of Columbia students, the law students that went to the Inter-American University, started by spending the first day learning about the history of the island, which included the political relations. So that was definitely key to have a good conversation for the rest of the week.
So I wanted to add something. So one of the things that we look at the workshop, and then we couldn't develop much in the March because we didn't have the data available, was the right of way for the American Railroad that was, envisioned back a long time ago. So how can we turn that into an economic development? So part of one of the labs in the workshop was trying to working on the untapped economic opportunities. So they were researching at what the convention center can do and how can they bring tourism, or how can they activate it within Puerto Rico, like the Tren Urbano that is planned for 1 million people and only 30,000 people ride it. So try to ask those questions and bring some answers to it.
What I'm kind of envisioning is the understanding of how the development of the island, because we're talking about a U.S. official saying we're gonna give up on you. Maybe in two summers from now, when the next one hits, we're done with you. That to me is beyond. It's frustrating to hear. So I think an overall kind of process of that development, economic development through history, seeing how neoliberalism has stripped the island of its own investments. I'm sorry, I don't want to get too crazy with you guys. But it's just really frustrating me. But a plan of involving the economic history, I think, and raising awareness to the political people in which you guys are dealing with, students, universities, on how that needs to change in order so they can be in Puerto Rico in 10 years. Because that's ridiculous. A people person telling you, we're done with you guys, get back into the playground.
And I would just say, I would add that I think what you're doing is really reminding us that we have to switch our lens, right? And that we have to think about, which is what I spoke about, what is needed on the ground. And that these things that are decided and the way that money is invested cannot be decided by us. It has to be dictated by the needs of the people as identified by the people of Puerto Rico. Not us who are here, but the people that are on the island. I will say this until I'm blue in the face. So that we can, if the university is in trouble, which we know that they are, if there are challenges to creating academic partnerships, I don't ever want to hear, and I am so impressed with the work that you guys are doing, but I do not ever want to hear the words academic tourism again. Because I think that what that does is we come in like fish in a fish tank and we look and we say, ay, qué lindo. And then we leave and nothing changes, right? That is not what we should be thinking about when we think about academic partnerships. We have a really phenomenal opportunity to really have intimate, meaningful dialogue, intentional dialogue with the people of Puerto Rico without letting them be in a fishbowl, right? So I would just say that. And I know, I'm sorry, you have people back here that have their hands raised a long time. So.
Actually, my name is Jerry Hush, and I'm actually a sociologist, and I was involved in the Tufts Community Service Learning and the ground. So I've really been engaged with experiential learning, active learning. And I think there are two levels. One, you don't want academic tourism, and secondly, you don't want parachuting in for assistance. Right. So these are two things. Right. And to speak to that, and I'm here because of Dr. Miranda, I'm here because as a practical solution to how do we make sure that the skill sets that are needed for the students to go are engaged with prior to their going. So I think that there are a couple of things that are very practical that I'd like to share with. One is that I'm here to develop a means by which we can capture the data, the information that comes out of dialogues. And that's this idea of action insight. So I've been working with Centro to train and to develop a toolkit, the capacity to train people. And I think the students are perfect. And you were in the group. So I'm putting it out there that I'd very much like to work with you on that skill set. How do you do field work, capture it, bring it back, and work with the community to analyze themselves? How do you hold the mirror up? We can provide that as an academic skill set. And the other is that I would really offer, and this is having built a number of partnerships around the world, is I think it's important to build the skills of collaboration. We talk about collaboration. We talk about coordination. We talk about alignment and cooperation as if it just floats in and suddenly everybody knows how to collaborate. It doesn't work like that. We need to really develop the skill sets. There's a listening, responding, how do we actually do that? And I would offer that for 2 weeks. If you have them for 2 weeks, prior to that somehow, some very basic skills, and whether it's team building or outdoor learning or outdoor leadership, whatever it is, make sure that they're capable of recognizing that there are skills to when you go to listen and work with the community. So those are two ideas that are very important.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take a question.
Okay, so Joseph, Bruce Channel. So being that
Edwin hit the nail on the head. Universities are a great place for cross-pollination of ideas to leverage political, economic, and networking possibilities. So have any of these universities have given thought to creating their own Puerto Rican chapters to create a network by state and then nationwide to wield all this power and possibilities with national Puerto Rican agenda to wield all this power to benefit Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans in the diaspora? That's the question.
Okay, I'll start by talking about the University of the District of Columbia.
Yeah.
We don't have a Puerto Rican Student Association, but we don't have a lot of Puerto Ricans studying at the university. So we are trying to give more energy to those Latino student associations and have Puerto Ricans being a part of them.
How many, just curious, are Puerto Ricans are? How many?
I think we
10?
have, I would say that in my school right now, we have maybe 5 law students enrolled, yes, and maybe 30 Latino students. But the president of the Latino Law Students Association this year is a Puerto Rican, which is great, and that's it.
Do you want to add something? Maybe have you heard anything about UF? No, about Puerto Rican Association.
Dr. Monica spoke to Cuny's after.
We have a question back there. Yes, please tell us.
Okay, I'm Gabriela Rosella. I'm an NYU student. And like, I just wanted to touch on 2 points that I feel like I always bring up in like every activism thing that I go to. First of all, I always notice that I'm the youngest person in the room, which kind of goes off the point of what people were saying about young people not being active. No, but it's very true.
You're gonna go down.
I hope she takes it like everything that we're saying also. So kind of like going off that point of why that might be happening, I just wanted to touch on 2 things, which were like decolonization and also El Paro Nacional that happened recently. So I feel like in everything that I go to, I always do the same thing and mention that sometimes we tend to be the minority within the minority of like people who want certain changes for Puerto Rico that kind of lead to like, you know, anti-US, anti-statehood and being kind of like really about Puerto Rican for Puerto Rican, but I feel like a lot of people on the island are still very, very, very colonized, very tied to seeing, I feel like, the US as a savior and very afraid to speak out or to say things that might be seen as kind of like anti-US, anti-colonialism, because I feel like people are very afraid. That was definitely a process for me. You know, growing up and then coming here, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and then I came here for college, and then I realized how fucked up our relationship was. And that's the case that I feel like a lot of students sometimes they don't go through that or are still going through that, and I feel like that's why a lot of young people are not probably as active here in the diaspora, because I'm definitely trying to start a Puerto Rican Student Association at NYU, and it's been really hard, and I know that some students tried to start it before and they didn't get funding. I've also been trying to get because NYU also housed and has Puerto Rican students, and they denied their request to stay from UPR, basically, and we've been trying to work on that, getting media coverage on it, and it's just been, we've been basically denied at every freaking point, so they're probably gonna have to end up leaving. And I kind of also wanted to touch on El Paro Nacional and us. You guys were talking about listening to the people and wanting the people to guide us. That's basically what they were doing in El Paro Nacional. They were screaming and they got tear gas and they've been demonized by their own people and their own government. And you got to think about that. People on the island are demonized for speaking out, and we got to work with that, and how people saying we don't want nothing to pick up millions of dollars, and why are you being such a malagradecido? Why are you being like this? Why do we have to take the city step? And people are being demonized by their own government and their own people, and I feel like we need to talk about that. Because I feel like we usually kind of leave that out of the conversation. I kind of just wanted to
I'm gonna, make a comment. It's not easy. I did it because I had previous experience and I knew how to do it, but you have to be strategic. On life is strategy. You have to make partnerships and connections. That's it. And if you have El Centro here and you have so many resources, you have to use them. Obviously developing those relationships to support you. But there's an effort to it. And you know, you have to write, just Google, who are the, you know, local people who cover news, and make a good statement why they should cover your news and your angle. You know, those are the type, and then see, there's Senator Rivera, and then Representative Cortez, I think that's his name. Write them, explain them, you know, tell them your
And we had
experience.
city council members
Right,
on board and support the letter, but it just ended up being NYU kind of being like, we're not doing it, also because University of Puerto Rico was giving
Right.
us a hard time saying.
So I mean, you know, at the end of the day, you can do your best, but you know, I would tell you, you know, use the resources you have available.
It'd be good to add that you guys, when you started, you had no money from the university. Zero. It's when you did the work, then you got the money.
Yeah, think long term.
Yeah, yeah.
We
I'm
have,
sorry, I'm giving you the 10-minute warning.
okay, thank you. Then let's take the question, here.
Yeah, regardless the complexity of Puerto Rican issues, we have to remind, my voice is not robust at all. Regardless of the complexity of Puerto Rican issues, and regardless the real complexity of the whole political scene, we have to remind that we cannot change the nature of academia in one activity. So academia will be academia, and we have to be very aware of the scope of the groups and the options that they will have. The University of Puerto Rico, both architecture and planning schools, have been doing practicum courses for a long time. So we're used to that, and we can help you with that. And New York has an opportunity that no other university has because of the commitment of the mayor. The commitment of the mayor didn't start with this initiative. Hurricane hit on September 20th. The 23rd, we were receiving the Emergency Management Office of New York as headquarters. They moved to San Juan to help us. So I think that is something that you cannot just pass by. You have the resources here in the city. They were the ones that helped us make the first inspections. It was a job limited to the city of San Juan, but they actually got to see the whole island because they were just curious. Curious. So there's a lot of information that they already have, including satellite imagery. They have inspections for San Juan. They have the resources that were filed for the federal government to go to not only San Juan, but Puerto Rico. So those are resources that you have here on your own background, and they should be part of the training that you're gonna give those students, because they were there. They were there on those first days. So
David, you have to tell people who you are. Exactly. So they know what you're saying.
I am the city planner of the city of San Juan, and I'm the president of the Puerto Rican Planning Association.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. We have a question here.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that a multi-chapter Puerto Rican Student Association is possible and existed. Starting in 1969, the Puerto Rican Student Union was founded in 1969. We had multiple chapters throughout the city university and as far south as Princeton University. In '69, we organized a conference where well over 1,000 students participated. Puerto Rican students from the entire city university, from as far away as Harvard, Yale, and many other campuses.
I was there.
So I wrote the chapter on the history of Puerto Rican on PRSU. It's in a book called The Puerto Rican Movement that was edited by Andrés Torres and José Velázquez. And this year at the Puerto Rican Studies Conference that's coming up in October, there is a doctoral dissertation doing a history of the Puerto Rican Student Union. Presentation, because that's his dissertation topic. So a multi-chapter, multi-state student organization is possible. It did exist. I explained why there was a demise of PRSU in my chapter. But 50 years have passed. So things have changed, and maybe it's time to go back and revisit and reconstruct something that is more lasting, more encompassing, and more the agenda that he set up, the question that he posed. You know, we had visions of liberating Puerto Rico, you know, and creating departments of Puerto Rican studies in every campus where we found Puerto Rican students. So, you know, it's possible.
Thank you for sharing the history and the opportunities. I think that's important for us to.
This hand has been up forever.
Yeah.
That's kind of right there.
Let's take the last question, okay?
I feel like I may have asked this question in a different context, but I'm going to ask it again in this context. There's been a lot of talk of students in universities, but their civic side seems to be a bit lacking. Like, movements are great. Movements don't only start in universities. They don't only start in academia. So, like, what are we doing? There's actually a rally tomorrow at 1 o'clock for Puerto Rico. Where are the people who are planning that? Why aren't they here? Why aren't we reaching out to those people? There's organizers in New York, Puerto Rican organizers in New York. I know a lot of them. When I reached out to them and said, "Are you going?" They just said no. Asked why. They didn't even respond. So why? Where's the disconnect? Why is that happening? I don't know. I'm not here. I'm from Florida. I know more about what he knows. I'm from UF, right? I know more about what she knows. I know about the student group at UF. I was the president of it at one point. But I don't understand where the disconnect is from the community organizers here in New York and the academic and student groups who are trying to do something for Puerto Rico. So my question is, where is that disconnect and how do we bridge that gap?
I mean, I would say
Tuesday is gonna be another rally on Tuesday for that day.
I would say it usually takes a person, you know, like, and Florida is no different, like around the country, that people, you know, have different agendas that they fight and want to, but there was a beautiful thing, obviously, with after Maria, but what I've seen is that the youth is actually creating like a base for unity. So it would be, you know, people taking the lead in terms of making those connections, you know, because everything is connection. If you don't know the person, you cannot send information and invite them. So it's making sure, you know, that some people take some responsibility, making sure those people are invited and can collaborate.
And maybe those of you that know more about what's happening here in New York can comment on it. So, is there something you want to say?
I can't answer that question.
You can answer.
But I do want to. The demonstration tomorrow is Columbus Circle 1 o'clock tomorrow. But can I just also note that
it will take a little longer than what we have.
Yeah.
Institutions of academia are predominantly white. Like only 20% of Puerto Ricans have degrees. Like that's including the diaspora and the island. So I mean, like we're talking about bridging the gap between the diaspora and the island, and using academia as the only means of that is actually very elitist and very non-inclusive.
Who said that?
I'm saying that.
Oh. Who said that was the only way?
I'm not saying it's the only way, but it's been a theme of this conversation, and it's actually been very explored very deeply in our conversation today. But also, if we do choose that, when we say we as universities and we as institutions of academia, that also includes lots of white people. And so when we're building that bridge, we're not just letting our children or people of our heritage, we're also letting a whole bunch of people that have no idea about Puerto Rico and no connection to it to also go to the island and engage in that fish tank mentality and leave forever. So when we frame these conversations, we really need to frame it as the theme of this conference, Puerto Rico, Puerto Ricans, and not like Puerto Rico, Puerto Ricans and Betty Spaghetti and like Chad and Brent.